Welcome to Mike's Mr. October and more. Okay, this is a 1957 Topps baseball card of Warren Spahn. And the reason why I'm showing this to you is I'm doing a special short video on Veterans Day, MLB Players. Warren Spahn was at the Battle of the Bulge. He received the Bronze Star and a Purple Heart, which is truly amazing. And there's tons of players who were either in Europe or in the Pacific War Theater. But I'm going to mainly focus on the Vietnam War because there's less than 10 players that were actually in Vietnam and saw some combat. And I'm going to show you some pictures. I'm going to show you a picture of my late father-in-law, who's a World War II vet, and my father, who saw 2 tours of combat in Vietnam and also is a Korean War era veteran. All right, so what I'm going to do is going to switch around the camera, and I'm going to show you those players. Okay, the first player who was in Vietnam was Bumbry. And he was a platoon tank leader and received the Bronze Star. And Bumbry finished his career with 54 home runs, 402 RBIs, and a 281 average. And he was on several division pennant Oriole teams and won a World Series with the Orioles. So that would be the first player who was in Vietnam, Bumbry. Next one is going to be Bill Campbell. And Bill Campbell was in the 101st Airborne, and he was in a radio operator. He played for several teams like Boston, Minnesota, the Cubs, Montreal. So he traveled around. He had an 83 and 68 record and a 3.54 ERA. Bill Campbell. Next one is going to be Garry Maddox. He was also in the U.S. Army, and he had the reason why he wears a beard because he had exposure to chemicals in Vietnam that left his skin highly sensitive, and that's why he has a beard. And Garry Maddox had 117 home runs, 754 RBIs, and a 285 average. Played for Philly and the San Francisco Giants. Garry Maddox. And my next player is going to be Chuck Coggins. And he was an infantry in the United States Marine Corps. And he got the Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. And he had no home runs, 7 RBIs, a 293 average. And he played for Pittsburgh, Atlanta, and the Boston Red Sox. He was in Vietnam in 66 and 67. Next one is Jim Bibby. I don't know if I can focus here. There you go. That's at the old Yankee Stadium. Jim Bibby, he was a truck driver in the U.S. Army. He had 111 wins and 101 losses, a 376 average. He was like with Pittsburgh, Texas, Cleveland, and St. Louis. And that's Jim Bibby. Next one is going to be Ed Figueroa. And he was a in the U.S. Marine Corps as an infantryman. He was in Nam between 69 and 70, 80 wins, 67 losses, a 3.51 ERA. Actually had a real promising career. Then he had arm problems. This one I never knew, but Champ Summers. He was actually in Vietnam, saw combat. He was in the U.S. Army, and he received the Purple Heart. And he was a truck driver, and one day we're driving, hit a landmine. Unfortunately, several of his fellow soldiers died in that, and he got seriously injured. He had 54 home runs, 218 RBIs, a 255 average. And actually, he was in the Tet Offensive, which was in 1968. That was a real unforeseen battle. And my next one is going to be Roy Gleason. There is no baseball card of Roy Gleason. And actually, he was 1-for-1. And he was part of the World Series. And that he had a pinch hit double. And he received the 1966 World Series ring. And he wore it to Vietnam. And it got lost in Vietnam. And then back at the Game 2 of the 2017 World Series, Vince Scully and the Dodgers gave him a replacement 1963 World Series ring. He did get the Purple Heart. He got wounded in the left arm and both legs by shrapnel explosion. And he was only of a few men that survived out of a 45-man platoon. And that's Roy Gleason. I'm going to show you one more player. His name is Don Tidwell, Tidwell. He was in the minor leagues. He had a very promising career. And his manager at the time in the minors was none other than Tommy Lasorda. And notice the uniform number he's wearing, number 32. Unbelievable. You know who wore 32 for the Dodgers. And unfortunately, he made the ultimate sacrifice. He had a 4-3 record, a 4.01 ERA, and he appeared in 19 games. Okay, I'm going to show you some personal photos of family members, and I'm sure most of the people who are watching had a father, grandfather, uncle, or a family member who was in a war with the U.S. on foreign soil. So the first one I'm going to show is my wife's late father, Andrew, and it's a veteran of World War II. And Andrew served from 43 to 45. He was with the 11th Infantry, 5th Division, European Theater. And he served under General George S. Patton. And he was in quite a few countries along the way. So this is a photo of Andrew. Great guy, great personality. Loved him. Next one I'm going to show is of my father. I love this photo of my father. And this is when he was a captain in 65 with Mac V. He was an armor. And it reads Operation Hodak Hawk, number 67. It was taken on December 11th, 1965 on a search and destroy mission in Quang Tri, and 2nd Infantry Regiment was involved, and it gives a lot more description. Here's another photo of my father, Vietnam. I got to show you a photo of his fellow officer friend, personal friend, who died, made the ultimate sacrifice, and that's Captain Paul Berthume. And Paul and my father both went to Norwich University. He graduated a couple years after my father. I understand he had left behind 4 kids. So if anybody out there knows of him or wants to do research, find family members, would always love to send this photo. of their late father, Paul Berthume. The next one is Medal of Honor recipient. My father and Lieutenant Colonel Andre Lucas served together with the 24th Infantry in Germany and in Fort Riley before both of them were shipped out. And this is Colonel Andre Lucas. Him and my father were in Vietnam at the very same time. He made the ultimate sacrifice. He was killed in 1970. I think it was in August in a battle. They were under siege for like 2 or 3 months with the Viet Cong, and he died and got the Medal of Honor posthumously. So if anybody would like to respond and tell a story about one of their family members, I would love to hear it. Or do a virtual response or something, So I just want to thank all of our fellow veterans out there. Again, Champ Summers, Ed Figueroa, Jim Bibby, Chuck Coggins, Garry Maddox, Bill Campbell, and Al Bumbry. Thank you again for all veterans out there. If you'd like to leave a comment, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And thank you for watching Mike's Mr. October and more.